Welcome to Eye of the Storm. My name is Marlon and I'll be your host, and we're filming on location at Recovery Centers of America at Lighthouse. Today we have a great show and it's about a topic that many people don't want to talk about, but it's something that we all need to hear. We have a counselor that works with us at Recovery Centers of America. Her name is Joni, Whelan, and she's the president of a company called the HEAT Foundation. The HEAT Foundation is a human trafficking foundation. It is all charity, and we want to get the word out and let people know about something that is right under our noses that we don't talk about. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Eye of the Storm. My name is Marlon. I'm sitting with Joni Whelan, president of the HEAT Foundation. So we've talked a lot about what the HEAT Foundation is and the people that they serve, but what is HEAT?
HEAT stands for Helping Educate and Advocate Against Trafficking. So there's two A's in it. A lot of people look for us online and forget to put the second A.
Right, because I look at it a few times myself and I'm saying, what does it stand for? You know, HEAT is spelled a different way. But what is human trafficking and how did you get involved in this?
Well, first let me read the legal definition because it's pretty lengthy,
Yeah.
okay? Human trafficking is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of the threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power, or of a position of vulnerability, or of the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. So that's the legal definition.
Okay.
How I got involved with it was way back, and not knowingly got involved in it. I was working with young children of substance abusers back in the mid-1980s, and we had a 13-year-old kid that was a chronic runaway. She was sent to her program because her mom was an addict. Her mom was in jail for her addiction. And grandmom didn't know why this kid was always running away. Turns out that mom had a boyfriend who would take this little girl to what was then called shooting galleries and crack houses where people would go to shoot up and do crack. And he would exchange her, sometimes for a couple hours, sometimes for a day, sometimes for a weekend, in exchange for sex.
And this is more common than not.
It's very common. This little girl died at age 16 from AIDS, and that's how I got involved. One day I was telling a friend of mine who worked for what was then DIFUS in Atlantic County about it, and she said, "You know that's human trafficking." Never even considered that. And I started thinking about all of the kids that I've worked with that were probably trafficked, either by their parent or by a spouse or partner of the parent.
Is that how it usually starts? Do the children experience trauma in the household? Is it they're abducted? I mean, I know there's a couple of ways that this could happen.
There's a lot of different ways that it happens.
For the most part, is it trauma in the family before the actual abduction? Or
Well, a lot of the studies that they're doing now estimate that most of the kids have been sexually abused to get involved in it. Before they were trafficked,
Right.
they've been sexually abused.
let me ask you something. So the kids that have been abused, they're still somewhat abducted because there's still somebody approaching them to get into this life. Are the children that have been abused, are they more than likely wanting to go with a stranger because their life is so bad at home that they feel that maybe it might be better? Are they volunteering to go instead of just being taken? I know some of the kids are taken off the street and they don't have a choice.
Right.
But there are some that you said that kind of do have a choice.
Well, they're enticed. They're enticed into it. You know, like a lot of the traffickers will meet kids at bus stops where the runaways are going to go, and they actually recruit other girls to recruit the young kids.
Yeah, you were talking about that. So part of their, I guess, duties to their pimp or whoever is trafficking them is to bring them customers or to bring them new people.
Yeah, recruit new people.
What a terrible way that must be to live, especially for the children that don't have a choice. We're talking about human trafficking today and how it's right under our noses. And I would say, even if you're in a mall and, you know, I've seen parents hold on to their children so tightly because they don't know if they're going to run away, or just them being lost is a fear to the family, right? Imagine the fear of them never coming back because they've been abducted and are sexually trafficked. So, I mean, this must be a hard thing to deal with day after day. What kind of hope do you give a child when they come to you?
Well, at HEAT we do a lot of educating and advocating. So what we do is we want the community to learn how to help the kids. We want to teach the parents how to keep your kids safe.
Right.
Let me give you an example. One day I was driving to work and I came to a cross street. So I stopped to let traffic go by. And there's a little girl in the corner, maybe 10, maybe 11, on her phone. And I sat and watched her. Even after traffic stopped, I sat there and watched.
She's by herself.
By herself, waiting for a school bus to come. I sat there for 10 minutes. That kid never even noticed I was there. Never looked up from her phone. Constantly texting or doing whatever she was on her phone. Anyone could have pulled up to that kid and pulled her into their car and would have never known it.
How do we get that kind of education out there? You know, I mean, and it's such a simple thing that there's a 10-year-old that's by herself for 5 minutes, 2 minutes it could take, right? Someone's watching them, and that's their next target.
That's right.
It's a very scary thing that we're talking about because we don't know who the next victim's going to be. It's a matter of who's hunting them, right?
That's right.
And what area you're in.
Area doesn't really matter. One of the things we know for sure is there's more slaves today than there have ever been in written history. More slaves today.
I mean, you gave me all of these things, and the reason I have this in front of me is because there are so many topics to cover with human trafficking, and there are so many actual definitions of what it is and how prevalent it is out there that I'm fascinated by this. We're going to dive a little bit more into what human trafficking is. We're sitting with Joni Whelan, president of the HEAT Foundation. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Eye of the Storm. My name is Marlon. I'm sitting with Joni Whelan, the president of the HEAT Foundation, which is Human Trafficking. So I want to read something to you and like I said, I'm holding these papers in front of me because there are so many facts about human trafficking that I didn't know about, and I want people to be educated on how we can help. Up to 60,000 people are trafficked in the U.S. annually. 80% of trafficked persons are women and children, U.S. citizens and residents, both documented and undocumented immigrants, runaway youths. Joni, what would you recommend to parents out there on how to get in front of this? Or
Marlon, there's so many easy things that parents can do. Like, for example, that 10-year-old kid that was out with her phone. Teach them not to do that. The other thing is, I was riding down the street and I saw the back of a car and it had like a little boy playing baseball. You know those little caricatures that they put on the back of your windshield? And a little girl playing hockey and a little tiny dog. And I thought, any perpetrator, that's telling them that you have a little girl and a little boy and a little dog that they don't have to worry about.
Right.
And then it said the name of the school that they play for. So that tells a perpetrator where to go to find your kids. Simple things like that. Putting your kid's name on their backpack or on their sweatshirts. Mm-hmm. Kids are more prone to go with somebody who knows their name. You know, if you're wearing a sweatshirt and you're 8 years old and I see you and I'm a perpetrator, I say, Marlon, your mom told me to come get you. Come on with me. You know my name.
You're going to go.
You're going to go.
How scary is that the people that are abducting and the violators are so smart? They know. They know what to look for. They know how to lure their victims in. It's up to us to be educated on how to avoid these situations. And you talked about teaching your child not to be on their phone. You know the society that we live in today, that everything is done through your phone. To take a phone away from a child is almost like you're punishing them forever, right? But if it's done in a way where you're trying to protect them and save them from things.
But let me tell you something. That little girl, the next day, I was off work. So I took my puppy up, walking that way. See, and here she was. But when she saw my puppy, she stopped and we started talking. And I thought, this mom's going to kill me because I'm going to scare the hell out of this kid. But I started telling her to be aware, be aware of your surroundings. I told her that I sat and watched her for 10 minutes and that anybody could do that and grab her. And she looked like I was scaring the heck out of her. And she said, well, thank you. And I thought, I did something good, right? Next day on the way to work, there she was.
Because they don't think it's going to happen to them.
Not me.
You know, and it's the same thing with addiction. It's the same thing with bad behavior or reacting to a situation. You know, you never think it's going to be you, you know.
And parents don't think it's their kid. It's not going to happen to my kid. But I'm here to tell you, boys and girls, at Heat, most of the people that we see are female, but 40% are male. So people automatically assume if it's sexual slavery, which is what our kids are sold into, it's female. 40% are male. So it's happening to both. And, you know, they talk about, usually when I say to somebody I work with victims of human trafficking, first question is, where are they coming from? They're coming from Atlantic City. They're coming from Williamstown. They're coming from Gallo. They're coming from any city in the United States.
Yeah.
But at Heat, we work with kids born and raised in New Jersey and sold into sexual slavery in New Jersey. So there are kids.
Let me ask you something. The parents of the kids that you're helping now, are they involved in the program as well? Have they been able to get their families back in their lives, some of them? Or
Some
no?
of them do, but, you know, remember, I'm an addiction therapist.
Yes.
So most of the victims that I personally see have been trafficked by their parents in exchange for drugs or out money for drugs.
Let's talk about that for a minute. So when you get into a situation like that, being a therapist, and you know you want to guide people in the right direction, and then you have a family that has done the ultimate damage to a child, what do? How do you fix that situation? Or is there a way out of that? Like, is there a therapy for the whole family to get through this? Is there a way for the child to forgive the family and move on? How does that work? I'm just thinking of myself, if it, God forbid, would be me, what would I feel and how would I get through it?
Well, with Heat, we don't actually provide therapy, but
Okay.
we refer to places.
Okay.
We refer to trauma specializing therapists, work with the family and the kids. But oftentimes, if the parents are the addicts, we have to get them into treatment
Sure.
first, because you can't go anywhere until they get clean and sober.
Absolutely.
But a lot of the kids are also addicted. You know, we had a kid that traffickers were giving him drugs, and they would stop giving him drugs, and he would start going through withdrawal.
Right.
And they'd say, well, if you do this, I'll give it to you. So he would do what they were asking him to do.
Sure.
But then they would say to him, well, it was your idea. You wanted to do it.
Right.
So that adds to his guilt over what he's doing, you know?
So he's becoming more damaged and more damaged because now he's feeling that it's his fault.
Right.
Or her fault. Mm-hmm. You know, we're talking about human trafficking today, and how much is out there? How many people are victims of this? And it's right under your nose. And there are a couple of things that you can do to protect your children. But the most important thing is to start talking about this and let the kids know that there is danger out there. You know, we're going to dive more into this when we come back. Stay tuned. We have a lot more coming. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Eye of the Storm. My name is Marlon, and we're filming on location at Recovery Centers of America at Lighthouse. I have Joni Whelan, who is one of our best therapists at Lighthouse and the president of the Heat Foundation. So we're talking about human trafficking and how the families that are addicted sometimes have trafficked their own. You want to talk about that a little bit and why they do that? And
well, why they do it is because it's easy access to drugs and money for drugs.
right.
So they're getting, you know, they keep selling their kids over and over and over again. We had a girl that was trafficked starting at age 9. There's a book that's called Girl Raised by Wolves, written by a woman that I know. And she was trafficked by her dad, who was an alcoholic. There's also one called Easy Prey that was written by a woman right from this area who was picked up at the Hamilton Mall, which is maybe a mile from here, when she was 14 and became a victim of human trafficking.
Wow. I mean, we talk about how parents can traffic their kids, or how people can do things, that we find are horrible things to do. But when someone is addicted to drugs and they're not in their right mind, these things happen. And we have to talk about this. We have to get resources for the children that are suffering from this, because it's not their fault. Like, they weren't asked to be in this situation, and they become probably one of the most street savvy people that there are. They start off at, you said, sometimes 9 years old.
Younger than that.
Younger than that, So tell me, what kind of resources are available? So you have a child who's no longer a child. So they started at 9 or 10 years old. Now they're 14, 15 years old. And they want help. They want to change their living situation. What do they do?
Usually by the time they reach adolescence, if not adulthood, they're already addicted themselves. So we have to get them into treatment.
Right.
And here at Recovery Centers of America, we treat those people.
Yes.
At Heat Foundation, we're all volunteers. None of us get paid.
Right.
Everyone's a volunteer. So a lot of us see our patients at our regular jobs, and that's where we see the kids here. So we try and get them into sober living.
Right.
Heat will help pay for somebody to get into sober living. We've also helped people. We've helped a woman get back custody of her kids because the trafficker took the children because he needed a tax write-off. So,
wow.
But you know what? They're like the stereotype of what people expect of traffickers, right?
Right.
Let me tell you about another little girl who's in 10th grade, and a senior invited her to a party. So she was thrilled because he was a big football player. She was just getting into 10th grade. She thought, this is fantastic. She goes to this party. They spike her drink because she didn't want any alcohol. They spiked it. And they gang raped her and videotaped it. So they tell this girl the next Monday in school, they show her this tape. And he said, you're going to do what we want, when we want, or your father's getting a copy of this tape. So for the next 2 years, this girl would get phone calls late at night and go running out. And she would do what these guys told her to do. They were selling her to their friends and to other men.
We're talking about a high school comrade or
We're talking about a senior in high school.
A senior in high school that took advantage with his friends over a girl and taped her, and now are blackmailing her.
They're selling her. And her grades started going down, and she started getting involved in drugs, and her parents couldn't figure out what was going on. They didn't have a clue what was going on.
That is such a disturbing story, because if you think about that, 10th grade, you're looking to meet boys, guys are looking to meet girls, going to parties, and you hear about the drinking and the partying and things like that, and some inappropriate behavior in high school and college parties, but you don't hear about this. You don't hear about somebody taking someone's actual life as a human being, I mean, they're still alive, but are they alive anymore? You're stealing their will from them. And there are so many people out there like that.
Absolutely.
So now you have people that are praying that do this because that's who they are. You have people in the same school that you're in thinking that it's funny to take advantage of someone. You have families that are addicted to drugs that are selling them. And who's right in the middle of it all? The child.
That's right.
The child didn't ask to be there, didn't ask to go through this, and now they're stuck in this world of pain and hurt. And they're reaching out, somebody please help me, or somebody please save me. This is hurting my heart a lot because, I often go to Atlantic City, and I get in trouble because I go onto the boardwalk and I want to feed people, and a couple of times there were some people that were living down there that came after me because they got scared. They didn't know who I was. And when they realized that I'm just ready to empty my pockets and do whatever I can to help, because we're supposed to, right?
Yeah.
Like we see people that are hurting, and we are the type of people that we run to it. It's like the firemen running into a burning building, right? We run into the disaster because we're soldiers of God, right? And we need to help. But I see people sometimes, and I don't know what to say. because I feel like I can't help everything. I can't make it go away. You know what I mean? So I have to commend you for doing what you do, because the type of people that come to you are hurting in so many ways, and you're there to help them.
Well, like I said, everyone at HEAT is a volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you a little bit about RCA with HEAT. And I hope I can do it without crying. Co-workers here have pretty much adopted us. We have an annual fundraiser every year. Staff here donates baskets for us to auction off. Then they come to that fundraiser and bid on their baskets to help us raise money.
It's a very important organization, and we started this in a CEO meeting. I think I told you this, where I put your program up on a board of places to support. Sometimes we're such a big company and we're trying to help everybody, you know. And there's some of us that know how to guide that a little bit, where we can put a name up and say, hey, we need to take a look at this place because these are the resources that they're offering all voluntarily. How do we help them? You know, and I had a conversation, you know, with our higher ups about what you guys do and how important it is for us to be involved with you. Recovery Centers of America is a company that not only has a mission to get 1 million people into successful long-term recovery, but to help people that are struggling. And I know that you know how many scholarships we offer and, you know, how the staff has surrounded you. RCA is RCA because of the people that work for RCA. We stand for the people who struggle, and we're standing for you because we're here. So, like I'm trying to hold it too. So, it's a very sensitive subject, but Joni's been a person like a go-to for me when I feel like I'm struggling, you know, like personally or can't make the right decision. But this is important stuff, and we're here to support you. And I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
So we're going to post your fundraiser. We're going to post your website. We're going to post your name, and we're going to make sure that everybody who sees this knows what you're doing.
Thank you.
We're going to try to get as much funding your way as possible.
Listen, that fundraiser is so important because every penny that we raise goes to victims and survivors of human trafficking.
I will personally be there, you know, and I will bring a few people with me, and we'll do some bidding.
Terrific.
And remember, we do all of these things because we're supposed to. If you're able-bodied and you have the time to donate, you should. You know, we don't appreciate the situations that we're in. We're healthy, we have a place to live, we have a job. You know, there are people out there that have nothing, people that have been mistreated. And we're here to step forward and give a helping hand.
One other person I'd like to give a shout out to is Father Justin. He's at the Christ Episcopal Church in Somers Point.
Okay.
He gave HEAT an office. So we have an office there, we have a closet there where we have a lot of clothing for people that come in and need something to wear, shoes, whatever,
Sure.
Soap, basic things. So I want to thank Father Justin and his congregation because they've been a huge support.
And I think that as we get more followers for this program, I think you should talk to your staff, the volunteer staff, and maybe go into human resources and find out how you can get involved in guiding people towards medical coverage. Like, people are coming to you, they've been in the street forever. What do you do? What do you tell them? Do you just send them to another organization and hope for the best? Do we have a connection there?
Oh, we have connections with all the other human trafficking agencies.
So do they get them medical coverage? Do they guide them to doctors' offices, dentists? And
Yeah,
because
the
here at
different
RCA,
agencies do that.
we want to do that as well. We want to make sure not only do you come to treatment and start your life over, but are you seeing your primary care? Have you visited a dentist? Mind, body, and soul, everything, right?
Yeah.
I would love to see everything like that happen with anybody that knocks on your door.
One of our co-founders, her name is Brandy. She's probably the leading expert on resources for human trafficking in the state.
Excellent.
And she helps people find whatever they need, wherever they need it. You know, one of the kids came in, traffickers are into branding the kids. So she came in and she had a branding runner from the trafficker. And she was only 17. and she wanted to get it taken off. So Brandy took her to a tattoo artist. The tattoo artist knew she wasn't old enough. He said, "I'm sorry, hon, I can't do it without your mom's signature, your parents' signature." Kid started crying and told him what that was. He said, "Come with me."
Yeah, I'm sure.
Him and Brandy went into the back room and he put a beautiful flower there. She doesn't have to look at that anymore.
Right.
And he wouldn't take a dime.
We're talking about people that are trafficked, taken against their will, branded on their body, and not everybody knows about it. Everybody needs to know about this, because listen to what we're saying. Trafficked, taken against their will, branded on their body, taken from their family, drug addicted. We all need to know what's happening right around us. We got to protect our children out there.
That's the important key. There are kids. We're not talking about kids being shipped to the United States or out. We're talking about kids born and raised right here in New Jersey, sold into sexual slavery right here in New Jersey.
We've been talking about human trafficking, and there's a lot of topics that we've covered today that were hard to hear, and both Joni and I were on the verge of crying because we're talking about kids. We're talking about kids that don't have a choice, and they have to grow up this way. And we wonder why people need therapy. We wonder why there's so many drugs to alter your mood. We wonder why all these things are here. It's because there's evil out there, and we need to be more educated.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming, Joni. We're going to post all your stuff, and we're going to make awareness to your program, and Recovery Centers of America is going to continue to support you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. We'll be right back. Our next guest is Jane. She's our patient advocate at Devon, and she actually works with a lot of these kids who've been in this life, and she's going to tell us what she sees and how she guides them to a better life. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Eye of the Storm. My name is Marlon, and we're filming on location at Recovery Centers America at Lighthouse. Today's show was a tearjerker, and it's not over yet. We were talking about human trafficking and how it affects everybody, how our children are at risk and we don't even know it. I have a very powerful next guest. Her name is Jane Goggin, and she's our patient advocate at our Devon facility. So I know that the patients tell you more than they tell anybody, because I've sat in your office. What kind of stories are you getting? And I'm sure you're hearing some of this stuff, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and if you can, get back to them as you go. And I know that there's men that have been trafficked that are afraid to talk about it because they're embarrassed.
Yes.
And I'm sure they've opened up to you because you have a certain way about you. And I noticed it when I first met you that it's okay to talk to you. You're not going to judge them. I was never judged when I spoke to you, and it makes it easier for the person that's struggling to let it out, because the biggest step is to say, hey, I'm struggling from something. Something happened to me. And you hold on to these things, and this is what puts people in a worse way, where they won't let go or they won't accept the trauma. Tell me a little bit about what you go through and how do you break those walls down?
Well, it's interesting, Marlon. When I was hearing Joni, I was reading through her packet that she gave about human trafficking. And on one of the sheets, she talked about intangible needs that every survivor needs. And it was safety, protection, non-judgmental environment, respect, acceptance, and a sense of empowerment of one's own healing and the restoration process. And I think it's so ironic because that's what we do. That's exactly what we do with our patients.
So I want to bring up something that you and I have written together, and that we've gone back and forth because how many job descriptions did we have to write? Our owner he doesn't stop. He wants us to keep perfecting our craft so we can serve others, right? A lot of people say, why do I have to keep doing this over and over again? Our leadership in this company empowers us to get better every day. and we get challenged. Okay, this is great that you've done this. What about this, this, and that? And when I first came, I was saying, man, I don't know if I can get ahead of all this, right?
Yep.
And then I realized I am the luckiest person in the world to be able to be in a position where I can assist the struggling, I can have a suggestion of help, and I can have leaders that challenge me every day on how to get better. You know, and these intangible needs that you said, self-empowerment. Do you remember? Educate and encourage and empower our patients, right?
Yes.
So the line on a job description that just was so strong in my mind was, what do? We educate, we encourage, and we empower.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot make someone get sober. It's not up to us, it's up to the patient. But we give our best to the patient to show them that we can lead by example. You know, and that word empowerment, when you lose empowerment of yourself and you feel like you're worthless, that's what you deal with when you first walk into your office.
Yes.
I'm not worth anything. You know, my family doesn't want to talk to me anymore. I've done the worst things that I never thought I would. What do you say?
What I say is a new definition of addiction. How about the fact that addiction has nothing to do with the substance? It has to do with the ability the substance has to make you feel nothing, to walk through life sleepwalking. And when we have people who have had significant trauma, like Joni just discussed, all our patients, every one of our patients has a traumatized brain from fight, flight, and freeze mode for so long. Literally, they need to get their drug of choice. It is a physiological and a mental need. So first, we have to break down that whatever happened to you, there is another side of it. You know, DBT therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, all the things we work on, they're all in the steps. But first, just meet them where they are. Meet that patient who has done things, self-sabotage themselves, and or has been a victim their whole life, and drugs were the only thing that helped them escape. Now we just break it down that you are going to be okay. We are going to use this agony, this pain, this suffering to rebuild the best of you, and it's yet to come. So we meet them where they are, we walk with them, we let them know that yes, you have been a victim, but now we're going to turn that coin over and we're going to help empower you to be the best of you. And I work with the greatest coworkers, everyone's on board, and each one of us can have a different approach. I work with the clinical team, but I'm not the therapist. So they get to do their part, I do my part. Everyone from finance, even our financial counselors have a touch with the patients, and everyone's on board to say, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be where you are, but there's a solution. And we want to hand you this solution. And you know, I also work, I was hearing what Joni said about just in human trafficking, there's more slaves ever in any recorded American history thus far. That just included the human traffickers. Imagine what it is with people with addiction mixed with that number. A mother or father selling their child for tricks so they can get drugs. Most of the world, before I got into this world, I would have thought, lock them all up. They all need to go to jail. No, they need help. Everyone needs help.
You know, we talk about the horrible things that are out there. How could a family sell their child, right? How could you just turn your back and walk away on your daughter or your son when you know what you're selling them into? And we're talking about people that are addicted to drugs and alcohol that are not in their right mind. And we're saying that I don't care what's happening. That's horrible, you shouldn't do that. But we're not addressing what happened to get to that point.
Exactly.
Right? So, and you know, for everybody who's listening, I'm not condoning behavior. I'm not saying that there's an excuse for anything. I'm saying that should be a society of help. First, we're going to dive into a little more about, how we help without judging, because in our industry, we can't judge. We have to just be willing to help until we can get the whole story. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's very difficult for us to take in a case and say, well, there's a lot of bad things that are going on here, but we can't judge. We need to assess the situation. And like he was saying, you're not the therapist, you help in your area. And I'll go back to the saying that we all know, it takes a village to raise a child, right?
That's right.
So it takes all of us to treat one patient, because the patient has several needs.
No doubt about it.
Recovery Centers of America is set up to take care of those things. And, I'm very fortunate, and I feel proud to work here, because I know that when they come through the door, we have resources here. We have people that care, and they put themselves aside and dive in. And I can tell you that the people that I've been exposed to in this company have molded me in a better way to help others.
There is no doubt about it. You and I both know Brian O'Neill. I mean, every day I have a sense of purpose.
Yes.
Every single day it is like heavy on the heart, but there's such hope in the solution. And from Brian to Steve to Dave here, every single person that we are lucky enough to work with, all with their different personality styles and their different missions, works together. And that's what RCA does so beautifully.
Yes.
One, it individualizes care, which is my role, along with all my team. Individualized care for the patient, and never, ever, ever not go to the solution. And the solution is there. And in the solution, yes, we help patients find where they have been at fault and what they've been doing and the mistakes that have been made. So I don't have to judge. Right. That's going to come from them. The more they get away from the drug that they've been numbing, because then they wake up and think, oh my gosh, I just did that to my kids in a drunken stupor, or there's a solution.
So I agree with you. So we all feel that there is a solution or a guiding platform, right, that we can start. And every time I do run into our leadership, and we're in meetings and we're talking about new initiatives and new things we want to give the patients, and I anticipate Brian, because I want him to come to me and ask me something. I want him to challenge me with something, because every time I see him, I learn something. I learn something about the industry that I'm in and about myself, of what I can bring forward. Because one thing about him, he wants to bring out the best in you, so you can project that onto your patients. And I got to tell you that since I've been in this company, I feel like I've grown. And that's why I really like working for this company, because it gives you a chance to really assist with everything. And when we talk about everything, there's everything, right? Every single thing that they're struggling with. And for the most part, people come to your office because the law is looking for them. My probation officer's ready to throw me back in jail. My landlord's going to throw me out of my apartment. I have people calling me that are bill collectors. I have done wrong, and the sheriff might be after me. And so they sit in your office and they say how the world is coming down on them. Please help me. Can you help me out with all this stuff?
Yeah.
Because I remember, as the patient advocate for the Lighthouse, this is what I would get. I would say, okay, tell me how I can help you. And then as soon as they started to trust me, it's almost like they threw up on me. Like,
exactly.
It's years of bad behavior and debts and running from the police and warrants and all kinds of stuff. And for me, I had to learn who to contact. And it seems like you've conquered that. Because I've been in your office a few times and said, well, what do I do now? Have a seat. We're going to make some phone calls.
So, that is one of my favorite parts of my job. Actually, it's all my favorite part because, again, I'm going to go back to most of the patients that I'm dealing with are victims to some extent because they're a slave to these drugs, slave to drugs and alcohol. They absolutely need it. And then when they need it, they get, if they already had crimes and they already have probation officers and they have court cases, of course they build up and they build up, and then it's another violation, another violation. So now you come in and you are scared to death, to be honest, with your PO. The number one thing that recovery is, the number one thing that we're doing at RCA, anyone in addiction should and is probably doing, is we have to be honest. First, we get the patient's trust and we get them to tell what they've really done. And then when they call the PO, we ask them to be honest. And we will work with them every step of the way in the honesty. So that transparency is something that's very difficult for patients who have been living lying to get their drugs, lying to do what they need
Let me
to do.
interrupt you for a second. Can you imagine you walk into treatment and you've done everything under the sun, right? And now you have a person that you don't know says, listen, we're going to call your PO and you're going to be honest.
Yeah.
Right? Can you imagine what this patient is thinking? Like, are you kidding me? I'm going to be honest. They're going to come get me and I'm going to go away for a long time, right? To actually get them to trust you that it's going to be okay, because that's our line, right? It's going to be okay. We have to do it step by step. We have to be honest. They don't want to prosecute. They want you to get better, things like that. And I know that I've said these things over and over again. And you know, until I actually met some of the POs, talked to them on the phone, I've gone to courthouses and knocked on doors. I sat with judges, and they would say to me, Marlon, what are you doing here? And I would say, you're going to help me, because they need help.
Yes.
And a lot of these judges were receptive. They said, you know what, we are going to help you. Because how many cases can go in front of a judge for petty crime, running from a warrant when you're addicted to drugs? Right?
There's no doubt.
There's so many things that we can help with. And before it even gets to drug court, there are things that we can get in front of. And these are the things that you do.
I do, and it's because of our mission. Our mission is that we meet people where they are, we help them, and we individualize that care. That being said, we're integrity driven. So when we are with the patient, it's honesty back. It's like, look, I can't promise what this PO is going to say. But I can tell you, they're already going to find out that you've been in trouble again. And their number one job is to keep the community safe and you safe as a patient. So let them know you're in treatment so they're not out looking for you. Makes sense? Most of them will do it. But we also have HIPAA, which, you know, and I get the HIPAA reasons, but there's a part of me that would love to be able to say, talk to your parents, get the patients to want to do it all. So we have to go with our limits. So when I deal with POs, I'll say, look, they have signed a consent, and they're scared to death to be calling you, but they're doing the right thing. With that, I also will say, if you call back and I say I can't confirm or deny, that means most likely the patient's pulled consent, but I say it right in front of the patient so that they know that we're working on our end to say, hey, we can only call you because we're allowed to. And in fairness to the courts, there are patients that go in and out of treatment a lot to avoid court. But that's when we will, you know, our owner, Brian, will say, go to court with them. That position that he made for you and us, that patient advocate, goes to court.
That's right.
And is with them and helps them through whatever it is. And I will say 90% of the time, the courts, the judges, the POs, even the administration, when we call those offices, and I'll say he's back, but he's doing it, we're banking on him, and we work and put them in a position where they're going to extended care.
Right.
Which is, we don't just, after 30 days, 40 days, 28 days, say you're done with RCA. No, you're going to extended care. You're going to have rules and regulations. And we have had patients that came in and were not willing to do it, that leave, know they could still go to jail, but are trusting that people are more for them than against them.
Right.
And that's what we get to do by living in the solution. The steps, therapy, all the things that can help them see the other side to the life that they're about to get. I love when I get the patients and say, tell me everything. They're emotional, we get their honesty. And then I literally am like, take the notebook, rip that up, ball it up, say this is your history. Today is a new day. And we get to rewrite the rest of your life if you just start trusting.
I think that's such a powerful statement. You know, I commend anybody that walks through the door of treatment. You know, when you voluntarily check yourself in, even if your parents or your employer is telling you you have to go and you go, right? Eventually you'll realize that you need to be there, you know, and it's the hardest thing to ask someone to change. You know, we're telling them that their best friend, the one that they feel has taken away all their pain, they can't have anymore.
That's right.
Because it's not healthy for you, and it's because we tell you. And they look at us, well, I don't really want to listen to that. But after a while, they start to feel the love in the building. You know, and it seems like maybe just a saying but it's the truth. We will love you till you can learn to love yourself. And the people that work for this company are probably one of the most unbelievable groups that I have the opportunity to be around.
It's an
because,
honor.
like I said earlier, working here and being involved in what we're involved in has definitely given me, I've progressed as a human being in this, in doing this. In New York, I did a lot of homeless work, and I always wanted to help everybody, right? But I never really knew how to help anybody. You know, I knew how to give some money, you know, when I walked by, maybe give a coat. But I never dove in to find out, like, what I could really do. I could serve meals, I can prepare meals, I can help with vocational, I could do so many things. And now that I have the opportunity to do this, I can do all those things.
That's right.
And I know you're just like I am. We're on 24/7.
24/7.
And I will say this right out there, and I'm happy to be.
Yes.
Because I am fortunate and I feel like I was chosen. And to me, that's like hitting the lottery.
Well, you know what? We get to mirror what we're asking our patients.
Yep.
We get to say, you're a hero. You know, being a hero is about doing the things that you don't want to do.
Right.
It's about accepting what you've been given. And, you know, nobody, you know, as a mother, I never nursed my babies and said, boy, I hope one day my son's an addict.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's exactly what we're all trying to avoid. That's why the stigma is so big. But the reality is, when you accept that and you start learning that if we change our thinking that makes us want to use, and we only look at the negative, we put you in a building where everybody only wants the best for you and wants you to just practice things that every human being needs.
Mm-hmm.
The 12 steps could help every
Absolutely.
human being be a better person, to be their best human self. Now we're saying to you, all of your wrongs can be made right to some extent if you just lean in. And when I get the pleasure of seeing those lights go on, mm-hmm. and see people come in and literally plug through those first weeks of detox and self-loathing and hopelessness and get that hope again, if they just keep doing it, and if families could get more involved, and if insurance companies would pay for families to come in another building on our sites.
That's a fight we'll have to continue to fight.
But it would make such a difference.
Absolutely.
Because families, just like they said in the Human Trafficking, that, you know, parents are tricking their children to get their drugs. Sometimes parents are giving drugs to patients to keep them in treatment. Mm-hmm. You know, they'll think, oh, they're only addicted to heroin if I give them a little Xanax while they're here. We've seen multiple times of parents doing things thinking they're helping if I just keep them in treatment, and it's just misinformation going. The whole family is sick.
Absolutely. You know, there's so many levels to addiction, you know, and as our CEO always says, that we're not treating bad people. We're helping good people get well.
Exactly.
And we want to celebrate your recovery. And David says this all the time, like, take a step. Dial 1-800-RECOVERY, take a step, come into treatment, give yourself a chance at life. We're open 24 hours a day, and we'll pick you up from wherever you are. We know that when you make this decision, we have a very small window because you might change your mind, and we're ready to go. So if you're listening and you're on the fence and you don't know what to do, and dial 1-800-RECOVERY. We'll send an interventionist to your house.
That's right.
We're free of charge whether you come to us or not. Recovery Centers of America, it's our mission to step forward and help right away. We have so many passionate people here, and there are a big percentage that are also in long-term recovery and have been in these situations, and there's nothing that they haven't heard. So they're willing to listen to whatever you have to say. We're not going to judge you. And when you're ready, we're going to come get you. And we're going to do the best that we can. This is your opportunity. We are a very nice looking facility. We have great amenities, but I want to let everybody know we are an in-network provider.
Yes.
In-network provider, which means we accept most all major insurance companies. We do more scholarships for people who don't have insurance than anyone that I've ever seen. This is a company of care. And I want everybody to know that no matter whether you see us popping up everywhere, our first mission, we are the company that cares. That's why we stay open. That's why our owner is so insistent on us getting better every day. People that are coming to treatment are struggling from so many different things. And we have professionals that can take care of everything.
That's right.
Where can you find a company that has specialties in everything?
And again, I think that we're saying the same thing, but it can't be stressed enough. The reason why we say 5-star is exactly what you just said. It is to let the patients know that they are sick, not bad.
That's correct.
And you deserve, when you're sick, when you go to the hospital, you get clean. We are basically a hospital. And you get the nice bed, and you get the cleanliness, and a staff that cares. But it's also hard work.
Absolutely.
And our clinical program is unbelievable. You are in groups, and what makes us so separate is, how about the emphasis that RCA has on the 12 steps?
Yes.
You can be working on your steps right there. And I can't say enough, every human being needs the steps. But this is how you live a totally different life. It changes. Sometimes a spiritual awakening can just be substituted with subtle shifts of perspective. And if we can start shifting the perspective from, my life will never get better, I'm hopeless, I'm worthless, to, oh no, I deserve
Absolutely.
hope and goodness, and I have a purpose in life that I needed to go through this to fulfill. That's why we're a 5-star facility.
So we're going to wrap up here, and today was a very, very powerful show. I wanted to let everybody know the dangers that are around our children with the human trafficking. People hold on to their kids. I'm from New York, and I've seen kids that had leashes on them, and when I saw that, I didn't know how to take that. But some of it is they're in a subway car with 1 million people, and anything could happen. Right? Some of it is that the kids run away on their own because they're a little bit hyper than others, right? But we're talking about danger that's around us, that people are preying on our children, and then the children grow up in an environment that makes them not want to live, and then they come to us because they're addicted to drugs, because they don't want to live in the scene that they're in. And, we're talking about trauma on trauma on trauma, right? And I feel fortunate that someone can walk through our doors and say, hey, I've had this, and this happen to me. Do you have something that I can start opening up with? And is there a place that I can go to after the 30 days that's like-minded, that I can continue my trauma? And we partner up with only the best of the best because we feel the patients deserve the best of the best.
That's right.
Like you said, they've been beating themselves up. They came in, they have hopeless. It's up to us to instill hope. So I would say what we do is hope.
We give hope, and we give hope personalized, that their tragedies, and they have been tragedies, can be used for their greatness.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is, Trish Caldwell, one of our best teachers of trauma and teachers, she's head of the family program at RCA. I can't say enough that when patients come in, they have a traumatized brain, as I said before, from fight, flight, and freeze. But now we've ripped their Band-Aid off. This is what she taught me, and that analogy stuck with me. We ripped their Band-Aid off. Their Band-Aid has been, I don't need to feel. I can use this, and it will take all that pain away. They forget instantly it will add nothing but more pain. But we rip that Band-Aid off, and we're telling them to bleed out in here.
Right.
So you're going to see, that's when we see the most people leaving against advice, because they're now like, oh, I got to go get it. I got to go get it. That's why we need the family involvement. We need to educate. It is the only way to beat this disease, is to teach families and loved ones and the patients and all of us how to meet people where they are and give them that sense of hope. And if we did it together, there's more barriers to patients just running out and going to use again.
I agree. This has been a lot to take in, and I know that this is something that people don't usually hear, and I want to let everybody know that there is help out there. Don't sit with yourself and think that there's no hope. It's just not a good place to be. We have a 1-800-RECOVERY number that's open 24 hours a day, and we have commercials that are on all the time. And the reason that we blast all these things is because we want you to have the option for an option.
Exactly, Marlon.
So you're sitting there, what do I do with myself? I have just ruined every relationship. I hate myself because of the things that I've done. What's left for me? Well, I'm here to tell you there's a lot left for you, and that's not who you are, it's who you became. So I'm telling you that there is hope for you, and there's no reason that you should live this way. You need to take a step forward. We're going to wrap up, and I'm going to ask anybody who's struggling out there that's even on the fence, even if you don't want to come to treatment, or if you have somebody that you know is struggling, you need to take that step forward to get the information that you need. Dial 1-800-RECOVERY. Tell them Marlon sent you.